Okay, year 10. So what we're going to focus on today is we're going to have a look at the physical and the chemical barriers that stop us from getting pathogens into our bodies in the first place. So this is your heading, and if you can underline it. And then in the next slide, this is what we're trying to achieve. So by the end of this, you should be able to give us some examples of physical and chemical barriers and describe how these bacteria protect our body. Okay, so to start off with, on the board, we've got an image of a castle. And I'm sure that from your history lessons, you would be able to devise many, many ways of getting into the castle. There might even be some places that you recognize as being weaknesses within the structure that will allow you to get in. Okay, so take a moment and think about, okay, so year 10s, you've identified that coming in through the doors, through the windows, through the roof would be the obvious places to come in. And our bodies too have some obvious places where it is easier for pathogens to enter our body. So our body is a bit of a temple, some of you might think. And what we're going to do is we're going to think about what are the parts of our body where pathogens can enter. So just give us a bit of thought and then restart the video. Okay, so we've just had a discussion in class and we've identified that anywhere there's an opening, for example, our mouth, our nose, if we've got an injury on our hands, anything like that could be a weakness where pathogens can enter our body. Okay, so there are two different types of barriers to pathogens that we need to be aware of. The first one is physical and the second one is chemical. So physical barriers actually stop the pathogens from getting into our body in the first place. So for example, that castle, the walls and the castle itself was made in such a way to stop any warriors getting inside the castle, and our body is made in the same way. And then we also have chemical barriers where these chemicals react with substances in the pathogens and either kill them or make them inactive. So pause the video and copy these two definitions down. Right, so year 10's taking up a whole page. What I'd like you to do is draw an outline of a body, and what we're going to do is we're going to make notes around the body of how our body protects us. So pause the video while you do that. Now that you're ready to go on, over here we can see some of the places where microbes enter our body. For example, we've all had an eye infection or an ear infection at some stage. We know that the coronavirus can move up our nose or mouth. We know that if we've got cuts or any open wounds, that they are particularly susceptible to pathogens entering our body. And we know from the range of STIs that our genitals is another place where pathogens can enter our bodies. So what we're going to do is you are going to label the skin, and we're going to make some notes about the skin and how it protects our body. So the skin is in fact the largest organ of our body, and it is there, it's quite thick, and it's there to cover our body so that pathogens cannot get inside. So it's acting as a physical barrier. And the only time it can usually stop defending ourselves really well is when we have some kind of cut or some kind of abrasion that pathogens can then enter, or when something like a mosquito pierces the skin and allows some protists to enter our body. So stop the video and on your diagram write skin, which is underlined, and write a brief description. So for the next label, I'd like you to draw a line to the eyes. Inside our tears, we actually have a chemical defense. There's an enzyme called lysozyme. And what this does is it actually kills any pathogens that land in our eyes. It's also found in tears, saliva, and mucus. And it's secreted by the skin that breaks down cell walls of bacteria. Okay, so year 10s. In our respiratory system, there are special cells called goblet cells that secrete mucus. And mucus is there as part of the protection for our body. It's a sticky secretion. And what it does is it traps any dust or pathogens that move into our respiratory system. And in addition, it also has an enzyme called lysozyme, like we've just spoken about. And the whole idea is that this trapped mucus with this trapped dust and pathogens gets coughed up or sneezed out of our body. So if you can draw an arrow to the nose or where your respiratory tract is and add in these notes about the mucus. Okay, so for our next label, again, I want you to point to the respiratory system. Lining our respiratory system, there's some very specialized cells that we learned about at the beginning of year 9 called ciliated cells. And ciliated cells have these little hairs at the end of the cells. And these hairs are microscopic. They're not like nose hairs that we can see. You'll need a microscope to be able to see these cilia. And what the cilia do is they waft the mucus that's got the dust and the bacteria trapped in it, and they waft it out of our breathing system so that to help us cough it or sneeze it out. So this is a physical way that our body is trying to stop pathogens from getting into our system. So if you can pause the video and copy the notes and then start again. So for our next label, I'd like you to label, have a label line coming from the stomach, which is below the ribs, on the left-hand side of you or the right-hand side of your diagram. So the stomach, obviously food, maybe sausages that have got bacteria in them might enter your body. And our stomach has got a brilliant way of trying to stop you from getting sick. It secretes hydrochloric acid, which is a very, very strong acid. And that acid will kill many of the pathogens that are in our food. So this is an example of a chemical defense against disease. So if you can pause the video, copy the notes before we go on. Okay, now for our next label, what I'd like you to do is do a label perhaps to your knee, where perhaps you have somehow tripped and got a cut in your knee. Now, when this happens, the way that our body protects us when we've been hurt is that platelets in our blood secrete a substance which forms a scab. Not only does that stop more blood from going out through that wound, but it also provides a barrier to stop the pathogens from entering your wound. And with time, your skin cells will divide by mitosis and that area will be repaired. Copy this down, and then there's one more to go. Yeah. Okay, now finally, on our skin, we also have some hairs, and those hair follicles have little glands that secrete an antiseptic oil. That oil, just like antiseptic that we put on our hands, helps to kill pathogens as well as keeping our skin nice and supple. So this is your last one, and then I've got some questions to help you test yourself. Right, now in our next lesson, we're going to talk about how the immune system works, and the white blood cells play a huge role in this, so no need to copy this down now. But to help to test what you have learned in this lesson, I've got a bit of an activity for you. What I'd like you to do is answer any 3 questions that form a straight line. and I'm going to very quickly go through them. So you can choose any 3 questions you want to answer, and then we'll quickly go through the answers. Okay, so depending on what the questions you answered, let's just see if you've got the right idea. So what is a lysozyme? A lysozyme is a chemical that's produced by our tears, by our skin, and it is able to kill any pathogens. It's an enzyme that breaks down the walls of bacteria, for example. Okay, sorry, I made a mistake there. It's found in the tears, the saliva, and the mucus. Where are ciliated cells found? They're found in our respiratory tract, so perhaps in our lungs. And what is often the first line of defense? It is, of course, our skin. What does mucus do? Hopefully you got that. It traps dust and pathogens. Name a physical barrier to pathogens. One physical barrier could, of course, be our skin. A scab could be another. Where is lysozyme found? So we've just said the tears, mucus, and saliva. What pH is the stomach? So because of hydrochloric acid, it's a strong acid, so it's going to be about pH 2, and that is to kill any pathogens that land up in our stomach, perhaps from our food or something that we've drank. How are ciliated cells adapted to their job? They've got microscopic hairs to waft any mucus away. And name one chemical barrier to pathogens. You could mention the oil from our hair follicles, the antiseptic oil, or you could have mentioned the lysozyme, or in fact the hydrochloric acid from the stomach. Well done, and look out for the next video.